Hi, good evening from the Morris Thompson Cultural and Visitors Center. I'm Sarah, and tonight we have with us Tom Huntington to talk about his experiences and what he's learned about traditional Mushkin tanning. We also have Elizabeth Fleagle and Anna Frank with us tonight. Um, tonight's tonight's live stream is sponsored by Design Alaska and Gem Company. We want to thank them for their generous support. If you like tonight's programming, you can sign up for updates about future similar programs, and you can show your support at our landing page, morristhompsoncenter.org/live. So thanks for joining us. I see we have 11 people watching right now. A little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions, you can put those in the chat to the right of the screen on YouTube, and I'll pass your questions along to Tom. Tonight we're wearing visors here, and we're seated 6 feet apart in the Morris Thompson Center auditorium, just the four of us. We're wearing visors instead of masks tonight so that we have an easier time talking. Tom does a lot of lip reading, so that's why we decided to try out these new visors and see how they work. So if you have a question, go ahead and type it in, and I'll share that with Tom here in person so that he can address your questions. Thanks again to our sponsors, Design Alaska and Gem Company, and our co-organizers, our partner organizations, Denakkanaaga and Tanana Chiefs Conference. And thanks to all of you for joining us. With that, I'm going to go ahead and ask Anna Frank to lead us off with self-introductions.
My name is Anna Frank. I'm originally from Minto, Alaska. My Athabascan name is Taj. And I was given this a name when I was about a year old. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in. This is exciting, especially the tanning. We haven't had too much of that. And so just stay tuned and listen to us. I'll hand it to Elizabeth.
Oh, I am Elizabeth Fleagle, and my in your back name is Albrat. I was born and raised in Denakkanaaga, Alaska. I'm in your back, and we were raised among the Athabascans, so I can be both ways. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Tom Huntington. Our family roots come from Kaikook River. My dad, my late dad, Sidney, was born in Hughes. He grew up in around the Hog River, Hogatsaka. And my mother, my late mother, Angela, is born in Kaikook at the mouth of the Kaikook River. And I myself was born 1 mile below the mouth of Hog River, halfway between Huslia and Hughes. And that's our family. Lived in Huslia, moved to Galena as a young boy. So I did grow up in Galena on the Yukon River. Now living in Fairbanks. Mushkin tanning, what inspired me, there's multiple things that inspired me. I like keeping busy, preferably with activity that our native people do in the past, whether it be woodworking or harvesting, taking care of fur. And what inspired me about Mushkin tanning was my parents lived to be a good age. My dad was 100 years and 7 months when he passed. It'll be 5 years a couple weeks ago. And at some point I knew, our people, we put on potlatch to gift, to thank people that helped us when we lose somebody. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do something, not just buy something to gift somebody, to to thank people, I decided that I was going to try to tan a moose skin. And my first idea was, oh, I'll just buy a moose skin. Then that's not my best. So I'll try to tan a moose skin. And so I started asking. There's most of the people that tan moose skin are late grandmas, and so that wealth of knowledge firsthand is not there. So reach out to different people, start reading, researching. There's actually quite a bit on it, not only our version, our brain tanning of moose skin, but tanning in general. I came up with a lot of great articles. Native Americans well documented on their buffalo, their elk, their deer, and so I just gathered as much information as I could and try to compile it to what I thought would work. Because each area, like a lot of things, we do things slightly different, yet we do them the same. The meat of tanning, the main sequence of tanning is the same no matter where you are, no matter how you are taught. There might be little variations of it, but we come up with the same end product. And another reason is, well, once I started in my effort to first, you just don't get a moose hide. You have to harvest that moose with the intent of tanning it, meaning that you can't just butcher a moose and cut it any kind of way. You have to harvest that moose without putting a knife mark on the inside when you skin it, because it turns out why they did that was you put an imperfection on that hide that will come back to you during the process of when you're wringing it and scraping it and stuff like that. Those knife imperfections show themselves, and you have to deal with them. And if you can't, then you end up with holes in your moose skin. And the goal is to come up with a moose skin where the only hole in it is the bullet hole, the one bullet hole that was used to harvest the animal. And so, you harvest it, and depending on the season, in the old days, they harvest the moose. There was no freezer or refrigeration, so they basically had to get it ready for tanning, meaning that they had to flesh it and dehair it and dry it so they could be worked on later. But nowadays we have freezers. You just get the moose, roll it up. I mean, it's heavy when it's not fleshed, still has the hair on it, still has its thickness, moisture content. It's over 100 pounds. So you just put it in the freezer, put it in a bag, put it in the freezer, and take it out once it's winter. And if you didn't do that, then you would have to you'd flesh it, dehair it, stretch it out, and dry scrape it if you were going to just tan it before freeze up. I find out that they say that winter moose is easier, and the reason why it's easier is if you dry scrape it, it's just like trying to scrape wood. It fights back and just gives you a little bit, but if you do it in the winter time, it's just like shaving ice. And whereas if I dry scrape the moose skin, it might take me numerous days I could scrape a frozen winter moose in one day. And I'll go off topic here and tell a little story about a grandma. Another one, excuse me, I'll go back. What inspired me was to honor all our grandmas who we come from. Their effort to take care of us, to clothe us, and we basically just almost took them for granted what they did. They did so much. Their effort was so big. I mean, like, I find out that tanning Mushkin, it's a strenuous activity, and our little grandmas did all that, and it's just my way of trying to honor who we come from, all the matriarchs of everyone's family, no matter where you come from, because that's where we come from. And okay, back to the process I'll go through is different from before freeze up and after freeze up, because before freeze up there's a step in there I include smoking it. The winter one, it's either wet or frozen numerous times, whereas summertime it's wet or dry, and it's almost impossible. I would say too much of an effort to try to thin a wet moose skin. You just can't do it. It has to be dry or frozen. So we'll go through the. I'll tell a story. I'll tell a story as told by one of the greatest storytellers that I've ever heard, late Stephen Atla from Huslia, and he told this story. It was winter time, and he went outside in the morning. He was I forget what he said he was going to do, and he went outside, and then, you know, there was no generator, there was no nothing, so it's pretty quiet. And when it's cold in the winter time, sound travels a long ways. That sound carry long ways, and he was thinking, wow, somebody's working on moose skin. It was dark, winter time, dark, and somebody was scraping a moose skin. And then he went about his day, and every time he was still outside and stuff, he kept hearing that scraping sound, and he knew what part of town it was from, and he figured it was late Grandma Bessie Henry, late Chief Henry's wife, and so his day was done, and he said he always, when he first go outside in the morning and when he's done from the day, he just kind of takes in the outside, you know, and then from the dark of the morning he heard the scraping, and then in the evening it was still scraping, and then the next day he went out. And there was no scraping. So he went back, daylight came, and he went back town, and here Grandma Bessie's Mushkin was hanging up, because that was part of their process. You hang it up and let the wind work it. And he said that little grandma scraped that Mushkin in one day, from morning till dark, and he was just, that was that's something. I'll tell you, that's something. And probably, I don't know what tool she had. She probably had a tool like this. And this is a flesher. This is a kind of a, this flesher was made by late Peter Henry, my mother-in-law Flora's grandpa, who raised her. And this comes from Jacket on the Tanana River. I think this here is between 80 and 100 years old. And the design, it's just an old file that's worked and tied to this wood. And before metal, they used a bone scraper. And this bone here, they would tie that bone to this wood. And the purpose of this wood is if you're just without this and you had this and you're working that hide, fleshing it, you'd get tired because it's just your muscle. But this little weight here, you just use it, your arm as a pivot and use the weight of this wood to do your work. They were ingenious on tool making. And so imagine Grandma Bessie had something like that, and to do one moose in just one day, that's just pretty high standard. I'll take a little break with a story or something while I go over my note.
Elizabeth, you have anything to add?
Pardon?
You have anything, story?
Oh, yes. I remember my older sisters, Alma and Anne, Bertha, and Kitty. Kitty is still tanning, I think, but then the rest are already gone. But we grew up watching them fleshing it in the fall time. That's when the season opened. They have all that tools like Tom's, and they just flesh the whole thing and cut the fur off, shaving it with a sharp butcher knife, and then they take they have a piece of log about 8 inch in diameter, and it's real smooth. So after they dehair it, there's something like black. What do you call
The
that?
epidermis.
Yeah, that thing, and they just take their knife and on that smooth piece of log, they just really carefully scrape it off. That's in the fall time, okay? But in the winter time, what we used to do is take the hide and make holes on the edges and make a really smooth snow like a board. And it's got to be really smooth because when you stretch out the moose hide there and you have a pecs, and then when it froze just as straight as can be, then they have a kind of a, what do you call it, so horse with a big log always there, and then they throw it over there and then they scrape, like Tom was saying, that lady was scraping from day to night. That's where they needed our help. All of us got our turn. Just on our knees, scrape, scrape, scrape. And it just really helpful to help us around, I guess. So that's how we did.
Okay.
And the same thing, hang it up and let it wind dry.
Okay. Okay, where are we at? We got the moose. We properly dehaired it, whether it be cutting it off, scraping it or soaking it and
We have a video of the hair
Okay,
removal we
go
can
ahead.
show real quick if you'd like.
Okay, cutting the hair off for Mousse, frozen. Okay, there's they discuss different ways of taking the hair off. You're soaking it through the decay. Actually, the hair slips, or you that's just before freeze up. After freeze up, I like putting it on the frame. To put the hide on the frame, like Elizabeth said, you put a hole about every 6 or 8 inches all the way around, and you stretch it, and I find out it takes me about 100 feet of rope to properly stretch a whole hide, and I use a knife. I have a butcher knife that's sharpened a little bit different. It's sharpened like a chisel instead of a normal knife, and I just put it next to the hide, and the hard part you do a little sawing motion, but on the sides of the moose you could just pull it through because the knife is razor sharp, and so you got the hair off, and to flesh it, I discussed that 2 different tools, the bone or the metal, the old file and wood to flesh it, and you could either do that over a pole, like there's a video, if you would play that, okay, and you're fleshing it. That's one way of it. Another way is to have it stretched on your frame and use your fleshing tools while it's just a big sheet, and you could do that. I like fleshing the animals before I put them in the freezer, or as soon as you get it, because it's harder to flesh when it's frozen. So you got to thaw it out there. And then, okay, once the hide is fleshed, de-haired, and stretched on your frame, if it's summer, you let it, or fall, you let it dry. If winter, you just let it freeze, and then you're ready to start scraping it. When you cut the hair off, it's just stubble, and then underneath that stubble is, I find out the epidermis that the hair attached to the skin is, it's about an eighth of an inch thick, almost an eighth of an inch thick, which is pretty thick, and it's black, it's dark gray, and so you scrape that epidermis off, and then after that I work on the flesh side of the animal, where you between the meat and the flesh on the inside, turn it over and lightly scrape that side. You just clean it up really good to take all the membrane. It's very thin. You just clean it up, because the majority of the scraping for thickness happens on the hair side. Everything you're going to be scraping quite a bit. If it's dry scraping in the before freeze up, it takes me about 5 days to, because it's basically like scraping wood. But whereas in wintertime, I could probably do one in a day. Yeah, I could do one in a day. If Grandma Bessie could do one, I could do one in a day too. But okay, and then you thin it. You scrape. Being an amateur, you scrape until it feels like it's too thin. Because in my learning process, I scrape mousse and I try to tan it. It's just too tough to tan because of the thickness. So thinner is better. Although you want along the back and the rump, you leave it a little bit thicker because that's where your moccasin, your coconut bottoms come from. They're a little bit thicker than what you would use for other garments. And then once I have that, if it's summertime and I got it down to the proper thickness, I include a smoking, pre-smoking, let's call it pre-smoking. And my Cree friend from Saskatchewan, he said they not only brain tan it, but they smoke tan it too. There's different stages of smoking. There's the smoking of it while you're working it, preparing it to be tanned, and also the final smoke for color and waterproofing. And so I decided to try that. And so he said, smoke the hair side, the side that you're going to put the brains on. So I smoked it, it's stiff as a board, and I smoked it, and then go back into the water. And the thing about the first soaking of it, it takes about 3 days. And in my information gathering, someone said it's ready to start being worked when it feels like bread dough. And my first try was, I kept, I want to get started on it, and I feel it, it feels like with Mushkin. And I just kept doing that, and on day 3, I put my hand in there and I said, wow, bread dough, it feels like bread dough, so I'm there. And that was kind of exciting for me because instruction was becoming real. And yeah, and so, okay, and if it's winter time, it's down to the right size. I soak it without the smoke until it feels like bread dough. And so once it's like that, that means the skin is swelled up. I'll say that tanning, you're changing the structure of the hide from raw hide, which is pretty tough. I mean, moose is tough, and their hide, the way it's made on their body, it's their armor, and it's tough. So to tan it, we literally have to change the structure of the hide, change it from raw hide to tanned hide. So we have to change the structure without destroying it, but you change it because rawhide, if it dries up, it just turns as hard as a board. It's tough stuff. But if to tan it, you change all that, it still looks pretty much the same, but it's flexible, it's tan. And so that's the goal of it.
A question, and this is a reminder that if anyone in the audience has questions, they can type them into the chat on our YouTube channel. So do you finish all of the soaking, or sorry, do you finish all of the scraping before you start to soak the hide?
Yeah, well, summertime, dry scraping, you scrape it till you think it's ready. And when I first did it, I kept coming up against, when you get further into the process, it's still too thick, so you punt, you go back to the step to where you stretch it, either dry it or freeze it and scrape some more. Because when you get further along to it thinking you've got it tanned, even part of it is tanned, but a section of it isn't tanned, it's not ready. You got to go back. So it's not until you become as proficient and as expert as our past grandmas. That's what I'm having to do, and hopefully at some point I'll just seamlessly go through it without having to go back and become an expert. Like this skin over here, I almost had this one here done. I mean, I had it on the frame, I was working it, and it was stretchy, and I just kept working on it. And it was one of those days where I thought, on the final day, to have a tan Mushkin, that's a long day, 10 or 12 hours. But I got tired, and I invited people to visit me that day with offers of all kinds of native food, salmon strips, dry meat, all kinds of stuff, but nobody came to visit me. And then so I'm trying to do the Mushkin, and I got tired, and there's segments of it that dried up and turned hard again. And through no fault of my invited guests, but it turns out that the thickness of those sections that turned hard again, they were just too thick. And so that's almost done. Anyway, we'll go back to, even though partly into the process of doing it, I'll state that I'm not really brain tanning, traditionally brain tanning. Traditional brain tanning includes fermented moose brain, and nowadays people have brains, they put it in a jar and it ferments. Before jars, before glassware, they took the brain, and there's a couple parts of that brain that has to be removed before, in preparation for it to be used for brain tanning. And that is I find out that's the what's called the corpus callosum or something like that, the connection between the right and left side of the brain where passes information back and forth. That one, the corpus callosum or something like that, and the what ends up being the pineal gland. And that one is influenced by night and day. It tells the animal, it creates actually melatonin and some other chemical to either go to sleep or stay awake. And so those two has to be removed because I'll say our ancestors were scientists, because how they figured out that if they left those two parts of the brain in the brain, they believed and experienced that if you left those two parts in the brain there and just used it, you're going to end up with stiff Mushkin. So they were scientists. So anyway, you remove those. The pineal gland, it has a black head, basically a black little thing with stringies on it. That comes out, and what underneath the brain, inside, kind of like the connection between the right and right and left brain, you take that out. You put it, you heat it up, and you're stirring it, but you're not really smashing it up yet. You're just kind of separating the brain matter from the vessels and the stringy stuff. And you take all that out and you end up with the brain matter. And before glassware, they would take a piece of raw Mushkin, wet Mushkin, and they would, okay, you got the brain matter. They would add intestinal fat from the mousse and some of its hair and continue to boil that. 5 minutes, it says. Stir it up constantly. And you take that out, and before it cools, you put it in your raw Mushkin pouch, or nowadays it would be the jar. And you seal it up, and it says that just within hours the fermentation would start. And I read that 7 days to 10 days it's ready for use. And that if you didn't have the Mushkin ready, that you could just let it dry up. You could let it dry up, and then it would keep for years. And that it would take like 5 or 6 tablespoons, and you reconstitute it with hot water. You could reuse it. And being fermented, nowadays people would say that it was smelly. I'm sure our old grandmas didn't say that. They would probably bawl you out for saying her Mushkin stink. But that's the traditional way of preparing, and I'll discuss applying it once we get to that step in the step of going through it. I myself, I use the brain. I get it ready. I do remove those parts that you're supposed to take out. I do all that, heat it up. But since I do it in my garage, and I don't want the aroma of that to permeate my house, I do it a little different. I do use the brain. I'd use and using the traditional fermented brain. What they're doing is actually making a version of soap, and I imagine it might be a little aesthetic maybe, or something. It has something. I'll say that our Creator created stuff perfect. Animals the same way. He created that Mushkin with certain substances and acids and fats and all that stuff in there, in this state. And he created the brain with certain fats and lecithins and different things that if you combine them, you could have 10 Mushkin. He did a good job to try to simulate it. I find that Fell's naphtha soap works as excellent, and I use granular lecithin. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. It's a natural substance that in the processing of food that the manufacturers and stuff, they remove that because they take the good stuff out of it and let us eat the rest, I guess. But anyway, this allows water to mix with oil. So when that, and I either use rendered big animal fat or vegetable oil or cooking oil or something like that. So the brain matter, Felsnapta soap, lecithin, and water. And it's and if you notice this stuff here, it ends up being like kind of like Jello. Like this has been soaking for 4 days because I'm getting ready to work on that Mushkin again, and so okay, that's the brain part. Okay, we think that the Mushkin is at the proper thickness. We soaked it for 3 days. It's all swelled up. That means now you could start working it, and then I ring it. It's a mechanical ring. I mean, I have all my tools here. Back here is a pole. I'm blessed with two birch trees with the same root, and I just tie a pole across, and I'll tie one side of the Mushkin on one place, and then I have another pole. I'll tie the opposite side to that pole, and I'll just ring it. You know, Native people who always say we always got to follow the sun. So clockwise first. Ring it as tight as you can get it, and then you lock that pole into your support and let it hold that position for, I do it for 45 minutes. And then once I do that, I uncoil it and I rotate it the opposite direction as far as I can. It's a good activity because there's so much torque when you're ringing it. It's hazardous to your health if it slip out of your hand. It'll probably beat you up. And then you lock it into position, and I hold it there for 45 minutes. After that, you unwind it, take it off, and then you rotate the Mushkin, and then you tie it back up, and then you repeat the same thing. So that's a sequence of 4 ringings. And from there, I'll put it back in the water for about an hour, and then I'll repeat that 4 ringings again. So it's time consuming because you got 8 ringings times 45 minutes, and it's some setup time. So it's all day, you know. But I mean, it's good exercise. It's good. You're trying to do a good job. At the end of that, it goes back into the water, and you repeat it again the second day, and okay. I think I skipped the part applying the brains. Okay. Before the ringing, darn it, I soaked the skin. It swelled up, and then I have another long pole, about 10-foot pole, and I'll use a clabass. I'll just use a clabass or ulu, depending on what culture you are, and you just kind of scrape the water, moisture out of it, till it's neither dry or wet. It's damp, meaning that if you add moisture to it again, it will just soak right back up, and that's when it's ready to apply the brain matter mixture. Once I lay it out on a tarp on the ground, on the flesh side down, hair side, the side that you scraped up, and then I got the mixture of brain, Phil's naphtha, lecithin, and oil or big animal fat, and I'll take that and I'll just dump it on there, and I'll just work it into the hide while it's spread out. I'll just work it in, make sure every last bit of it is worked in. You let it set. I let it set for about a half hour, and I go back there again, and I work it in by hand again, the same thing. And then once I did that twice, I'll fold it in half, and I'll let it set for about a half hour, and then so it's folded now with the brain matter mixture sandwiched in between, and I'll let it set for about a half hour, and then I'll go back and I'll massage the top so that it's working it, and then I'll flip it over and I'll work it, and I just want to try to work the brain mixture into the hide while it's thirsty. And then so I rubbed it like 1, twice, 3 times now, and then once I do that, I'll fold it up to where the edges are not exposed. It's all, it's in half, and I'll fold it back, but I won't let the part come out, and then I'll fold it up, and I'll set it aside in a cool place, not a warm place, not a hot place, but not where it's going to freeze, just room temperature for a couple days, so that since tanning is a fermenting process, it's starting to work its magic for a couple days. And once it's done that, then it goes back into the tub and soak for a couple days, and then we get to the wringing part, which I discussed. And we repeated 2 days of wringing, and then if it was summertime, I would let it dry, and then I would smoke it. And then if it's wintertime, it's going to either be wet or frozen. I'm going to, it's wrung out, I put it back into the water, and then I just put it over the pole, and I start using these tools. I use the clabass or ulu. I have a special tool from my Cree friend in Saskatchewan. And I use this to squeegee the water out. They're all used for the same purpose. I made this modified clabass with a bunch of cuts in there. And this in here too is from my friend in Saskatchewan also. It's another scraping tool. And it has a bunch of little serrates in there also. And then when I'm doing that part, it's over the pole. I find out when I from my information gathering that the pole that they put up, however tall that person is, the pole is eye level. It just makes it easier for whoever it is tanning to be, because you're using a continuous motion. And if you find out that pole is your eye level, you know, and the Mushkin is over it, and then you're holding the bottom and you're working it with whichever tool you got. You work that one side. You either go into the other side or turn the hide around and scrape it that side. And then, so you got those sides scraped, and then the hide is like this, but the edges you want on the bottom, so you turn the hide 90 degrees, you do that again, both sides, and then you flip the hide over, do the same thing. That's one, it's like the 4 ringings, that's one segment of scraping. Go ahead.
I have a question for you. Do you use the same scraping tools for this stage of ringing that you use earlier on when you're scraping the hide?
Okay, the scraping the hide, I use this tool just by accident. You know, I tried coming up with different tools. I even tried finding some of the old grandma's tools, but those are treasures that no one will give up. So I just said, okay, I'm gonna and I noticed that they use, for metal, they use the file. The file is got good, it makes sharp tools. And so here's one that I want to make. And then, so I got this here, and I was going to just get a short handle to scrape. And then I lucked out, and I had a broken axe handle. It was broken off right at the axe head. And I said, oh, there's my handle right there. And I put the metal part in there, but the wood was up here like this, and I tried using it, and it just didn't fit. I mean, it wouldn't. And then I turned out that if I cut this much off, and this is the surface of the hide, and if it's continually straight down, it has the right angle, and then if you pull the bottom a little bit more, it'll dig in. But you use this as a pivot to how much you want to scrape. You want to scrape light. You don't pull the bottom. If you want to really get a good bite out of it, you pull the bottom and it'll shave. Summertime, like I said, it takes a lot longer, but wintertime, this tool here, it just like scraping ice. It just comes off at however long your stroke is, about that wide of Mushkin. It'll just end up as like a curly fry. It just in it. Before long, you all around you at the base of your frame is. It happens pretty fast because, like I said, with this tool, I could do the Mushkin if it's wintertime in a single day. Summertime, if it's dry, 4 or 5 days in a real workout. So does it?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay, if it's summertime, you smoked it. If not, you just go back in and you worked it. You worked it, and there's different techniques, like when it's over the pole, since you're really working it, you wrap it around the pole, and the part you're working with, its weight kind of locks it on the pole instead of it just slipping over the pole. That's just a learned thing. I find that you have to use different wraps with a bigger skin or smaller skin, and like I did one calf. It was actually a roadkill calf mousse that somebody gifted me, and it required very little scraping. The hide, but that one, it was really beautiful hide. I'll say that each Mushkin that I've done so far has taught me something different. Like the first one I did, I lucked out and I just ended up with high quality. And this one here, it's going to be high quality. I just have a little more work on it. No knife wounds, one single hole. That Mushkin, I'm doing it for someone. It might have been not skinned right. There was numerous knife marks. So when one of the main reasons why you don't want knife marks is because you create a weakness, and when you're wringing it, it's moist, and you're literally breaking the structure. You're pulling it apart so that the tanning process takes part, and so that weakness, when you're wringing it so hard, I mean, once COVID is over, anybody watching can come to my yard, and we could wring a Mushkin, and you'll see, like, whoa man, that's like, don't let go, this thing could get us. Anyway, you're wringing it so hard, where that imperfection, where that knife mark is, instead of pulling apart evenly, it'll literally pull that knife mark and make a hole. That's why you want to start, when you're going to do a Mushkin, to make sure you skin it right. That one taught me so much. The tsiga, the calf, that one taught me that don't wring it like the big tough bull. It's a young one, so you got to treat it more gently to end up with. It's still a very beautiful. It's still a very beautiful piece of Mushkin. It's not smoke tanned yet. It's thin, but it's beautiful. There was no holes in it, and those holes there, these holes here, are from over wringing it, but there's still plenty of beautiful Mushkin. And when you're working on it in the summertime, when you let it dry, I use sandpaper. I use sandpaper to you know how some Mushkin, it's kind of frizzy when you're done? Anywhere that it's too smooth, all you have to do is break those fibers up a little bit, and it'll fuzz out, like it'll look really good. And so I don't know how they did it, other than wringing it and scraping it. I find that I use little sandpaper, and it creates from my lack of being an expert. Okay, we're working we're working it over the pole, and 2 days back into the water, and this is when you can't have anything else planned because of the it's a long day to finish a hide, but maybe Anna would tell the story right now on something.
Well, I can say that since our grandmothers didn't have freezers and all that, once she got her moose skin, she had to work on it right away, which means we have to cut the hair off, and Tom has a knife there. Oh, he didn't bring his knife, but it's a kind of like a butcher knife, real sharp, and what we do is have a pole about 5 feet high. We throw the moose skin over that, and we cut the hair, just cut all the hair off. And then turn it over the next day and flesh it. And that's what with the tool, with the heavy knob on top. Yeah, that's the fleshing tool for our grandmother. And just taking all that stuff off there, the meat, the sinew, or whatever is left there. And so once she do that, she doesn't stop. She continues because, again, no freezer. We just gotta, and usually they'll put this maybe in the springtime, work on it, and take all the flesh and the hair off, and then they'll hang it up and let it dry. And you could let it dry all summer, but don't let it. Sometimes when they're in the fish camp, they'll put the moose hide in the so on a rainy day so it don't get wet and stuff like that. But for our grandmothers, it was a lot of work because they had to continue on. And I tan one hide in my lifetime. And once you start, you don't stop.
Yep.
And when Tom talks about smoking, our grandmothers in my area, we use cottonwood, all rotten, that soft stuff, and they would smoke the moose hide like that. And I think they probably would smoke it twice.
Yeah.
And put it in the water, and again use the tool, the fleshing tool. We use that to stretch the skin, and that helps. And of course, the brain part again, he talks about how he does his. With the brain part, we immerse the skin in a tub, and it just stays there and soak up. Yeah. And then we'll pull it out and put it on a pole again, and use the fleshing tool again. And we're just stretching it and letting that fermented brain work its way in like yeast. And so it's a lot of work. Yeah, but I think I would say a lot of women had tanned moose hide by Christmas time. and all the little ones would have pretty little moccasins to go to the hall or go to the Christmas party, Christmas school plays and what they have at school. And for me, it was the most exciting part because we never used to receive gifts. I never remember getting Christmas gift until I was 6 years old. I didn't even get a gift. I got a Red Cross box. And it was a toothbrush, toothpaste, and stuff like that in there. Colors, maybe. And so, but the most important thing for us was our new moccasins. That was the highlight for our Christmas plays or Santa, when Santa came to the village. So us women were busy, busy, busy in the fall time until up to Christmas. Right after you tan your hide, you started cutting out your boot patterns.
Yeah.
So
That that first Mushkin I did, and we gifted for potlatch, you know, for me it was just so beautiful, and my selfish self thought was, oh man, we're going to cut this up and destroy it. But then my sister said, no, the way we're going to cut it up is there's going to be enough for the two soles of the feet and the trim around the top to attach whatever they're going to make the boot with.
mm-hmm.
And then once she told me that, it was like, okay, we got to make just right, you know,
Right.
so that we could so as many people as we can give to as many people as we can out of this Mushkin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing we talked about before the show was this is part of our culture that sustained us before going to the store and buying clothes. It clothed us. It helped us survive. Not only with Mushkin, all the fur, the caribou, the otter, beaver, marten, mink, lynx, fox, everything. My late father, in one of his stories, he said there was a flood, 1937 in Kaikuk. He said prior to that flood, all the people, every family was dressed so richly, so eloquent, so beautiful. Everybody was, and then in the flood of 1937, all the caches and everything was taken away. That means all that went away, and it's not something that you could just readily get back, because you have to make it. You can't go to the store to buy it. And he said after that 1937 flood, he said the people actually looked poor because they were not in their natural beauty, I guess you could say. They were forced to be wearing what they could get from Western culture. And so the tanning of not only moose skin, caribou hide, all the different fur bearers, that's part of us. And I think it's important, you know, we are changed people, but we have to remember where we came from, what got us, what sustained us. And I think it's really worthwhile to hang on to it and to even relearn it. For me, it's like part of a bucket list. Everybody should have a bucket list, that things that they want to do, places they want to go in their life. And for myself, not only tanning skins, woodworking, this tanning, in my opinion, is just as important as retaining our language and our songs and dance. It's in the same thing. It's where all those things that our culture, all the different aspects of our culture, is all important to acknowledge and even honor to the people that we come from, where we come from, who we are. We're still learning how to be Western people. We talked about being from the village, moving to the city, you know, and I mentioned we all come to the big city and we all got shin splints, learning how to walk on pavement. And I'm sure nowadays the city folk, if they go out into the woods, they wouldn't know how to walk quietly to conduct or hunt or sneak or, you know, what all the things that we're inherently trained to do. You know, you slowly lose it, but I think it's worth the effort to try to retain our history, our who we are. And so, you know, it makes me feel good to say that, because I'm doing a little bit. I'm an amateur. I'm trying. I lucked out and did my first Mushkin was a gift. It was a gift because it was for the right purpose. And like in my family, my wife and I, we have many kids, and none of them, I'll sadly say, none of them has a Mushkin vest. We have some boots and beaver skin mitts and fur hats and stuff, but my goal is, like I got some caribou hide right there. My vision for that is since my family is multicultural, meaning we're Koyukon, we're Bente, we're Kuchin, we're Inupiaq, we're Yupik. I have all the cultures in Haida. I have all the cultures in my family. So that rolled up raw caribou hide over there, I envisioned that as a dress for my Kuchin granddaughter. And the Mushkin, or this Tetsiga, you know, there's Teniga, this moose, but there's different names. Tetsiga is calf moose. That Tetsiga right there is going to be for something that my granddaughter, her name is Roslyn. Her English name is Roslyn. And I start gifting my kid's native name too. Her native name is Hakot Del No. When I first trying to learn how to say it, I said Hakot Del Dis No, like an English speaking native guy, I guess. But it's Hakot Del No. That was late Grandma Bessie is my dad's aunt. Her sister Anna was my grandma. Grandma Bessie's husband was late Grandpa Chief Henry. His mother was Hakot Del No. So I'm trying to even to give those old names to my family members. Anyway, hopefully that the Tika is going to be something for my granddaughter. And in the other Mushkin, I hope one day for my sons, my grandsons, to have a vest. I'll tell a story about my then 9-year-old. He's 10 years old now. My grandson, Hank Moon, Henry, his name is. I call him Hank Moon. We call him Hank Moon. Last winter, in this day and age, a lot of our youth is stuck with these games. They're just stuck on them games. And I noticed that my grandson was, man, he's stuck on that game. So I told him, let's go for a snow machine ride. And he said, no, he didn't want to go. I said, we'll take two snowmobiles. You could drive one. He said, okay. And so I took him out, but he was too small to handle the snow machine, so he rode with me. We went across the Tanana Flat, and I seen Beaver House, and I said, you want to trap beaver? He said, no. I know he just want to get back home to get back on that game. And so I told him, I enticed him, I said, well, I'll set this beaver house while you drive the snow machine around the lake. And he was okay with that. And then, so we set two beaver houses, and we went back, and he was driving it, and then I knew we caught one, so I waved him down. He came over, and then I wanted him to experience him seeing us catch our first beaver, and then so I pulled it out from under the ice, and that just I could see it. Magic happened. He was intrigued. So we caught the beaver and took it home. I skinned it for him. Showed while he's watching, talked him through it. And then he was the one that said, when are we going again? And then so we came back over there. We set a couple more houses, and we ended up catching 8 beaver. And I said, oh, I think I'll have these tanned, and we'll make you a beaver hat. And one of my other attempting hobbies is I sew, whether it be sewing machine or, I made my own martin hat before, and he knows that, and he said, no, Papa, I want you to tan it, and I want you to make it. And then he said, and I want beaver skin mitts, and I want beaver trimmer on my slippers. And it was so touching for me that I'm still in the process of doing that, tanning the beaver skin. I didn't have no patterns. I reached out on Facebook, and I got a bunch of patterns from different parts of Alaska, great friends. So my sewing of the hat and the mitts and the slippers, it's to be works. But so just by taking my grandson out, taking him away from become brainwashed with gaming, to go out and to enjoy what's out there, as simple as that, instills, I could see in him to want to do that more, and I hope to do that to the rest of my grandsons too. So that's a part of why I'm intrigued with tanning, not only moose skin, marten skin, beaver skin, fox skin, caribou hide for tanned hide, and caribou with hair on for mattress.
Very good. You could do all our taping from now on. You know how to do everything.
Yeah. And okay, so we got it all ready. We harvested the moose, properly skinned it, fleshed it, de-haired it, scraped it, smoked it if it's in the summer or frozen in the winter. Soak it, scrape it till it's thirsty, put the brain matter on it, let it set, goes back into the water, you wring it, couple days, same thing, scraping, and then at that point, you're done working with it. Now, the final step is I put it back on the frame, and I use these tools for scraping the moisture out of it. Once on the final day, you work it till it's dry. You use those tools, and traditionally, they have a little stick and they have a stone. They attach it there, but I don't know how to do that, but I did this one, and it works great. It's the same thing. While it's up on the frame there, you're making that hide move so that when it dries, it don't become stiff. Because if there's any moisture in it, and if it's in a unmoving state, it'll turn hard. So you have to work it, keep it moving until it's dry. The fall time it's pretty good, or late spring, it's good. I use this tool. I use this old broken paddle. I seen this, my buddy Roy Nelson from Koyukuk, I seen this in his porch, and it was probably gifted, probably a potlatch. This is a handmade out of spruce, but the handle broke, and I said, being woodworking is one of the things I like to do. I said, hey, can I take that? I'll duplicate that. And then he said, oh, go ahead, it's just going to sit right there. And so I took it, and then I tried using a paddle to work that hide, and I just find out that this thing is just right. You're working it, and another tool I'll use. At one point, this was very sharp. I'll use this like a Pulaski. You have to be careful because it's just sharp, and it could probably, moose hide is pretty tough, but you become proficient. You could literally swing it, and those hard blows, squeeze the water out, keep it moving while it's drying, and this Pulaski fireman's tool. This is dull, and it's the same thing. You just hitting it, and the idea is to stretch and keep that hide moving until it's dry. I'll use anything. I'll use an oar. I'll use pole. I'll use this. I'll use the sharp point on the thicker parts. I mean, you want to make sure that when you're working it, you could, as you're working on the hide, it tells you by the feel that when you're touching it with the different tools and stuff, it'll tell you, because it does this good right here, and it'll tell you where it needs more work, and that's just by experience. And in these moose hides, they'll teach you so much. They'll actually somehow tell you, hey, I need more work here, or stuff like that, just with experience, and so you like this one is almost done. That tsiga is done, but it's not done yet because it hasn't been smoked, and I'll discuss that. And this container here is basically rotten wood, rotten spruce, and there's a art in finding the right ones. When I first started, I found rotten spruce, and then it just when it dried up, it was just hard. But as we notice here, it just all crumbles up, and it reminds me of buhack. And if anybody remembers buhack, it's just the old mosquito dope that would burn without flame. And that was the goal of this, is once your starter burns away and you put this on it, it'll smoke, it'll smudge without a flame, because when you smoke the Mushkin, you can't introduce heat to it. It'll turn hard. So basically, you're cold smoking the Mushkin to one, to waterproof it, and two, to for color. And this wood right here represents Kaikuk River, Yukon River, Tanana River, Copper River. And all, when I travel, knowing that I need rotten spruce, you know, I make sure that I have my harvester's eye out, because you want to keep in mind that, you know, it's all natural stuff that you're using almost, and that you collect that, and that's about half of what I have. I have some more that still needs to be crumbled up and stuff, and so let's say let's say this little tsiga. Okay, when I'm going to get ready to smoke it, I'm going to sew it into a bag. This could be the whole thing. You're going to sew it here, sew it down here till you have a big sock, and then I seen them. They either attach some kind of sewing, anything, old blue jeans or something, to to actually get it away from the heat of your smudge, and this is it's hung up like a sock, and I see where the old Yukon stove they got there with no chimney, and it's under there, and the stovepipe hole is coming out into that sock, and it's smoking. And if there was all these holes, they take a section from the side and they patch those up, because if you didn't, that smoke, they'll all want to come out those holes, and around the hole there'll be a darker, because a lot of smoke is going by it. So they want to plug up all those holes first, and when they smudge it, and you could either do one side or both sides. I'm going to do both sides on this one.
And this color that we tan, this is the color it comes out to be.
Yeah.
So
Think
it
it's
could
darker.
it could be dark or it could be light.
Yeah.
It depends on the person who's
And another thing too is when you brought up cottonwood, if it was summertime, when I let it dry, I smoke it in the house, in the smokehouse with cottonwood for the smoke tanning part. But rotten spruce, I use that for the final smoking toward the end of it. Go ahead.
We have a question from Shelby in our audience. Shelby would like to know, well, first of all, Shelby says thank you so much for sharing this knowledge. And I'd like to say that we do have 21 people watching. We've had over 20 people the whole time, so thank you everybody for watching tonight. Shelby's question is, do you tan caribou hide
Yes.
the same way that you tan moose hide, or do different large animals require different methods?
Okay, hold on. Okay, caribou. It's leather, made the same, different animal, but lighter. This represents 3 caribou, and it's about 4 pounds, so it's very light. Whereas this one here, probably right now, 20 pounds, 25 pounds, maybe. So you do the same thing, but treat it gentler. Like on the ringing portion, I would imagine, I haven't done a caribou yet. I would imagine like when this is the pole I use for tying that one side. So, and then when it gets so tight, this much, I literally, it's tied right here. I put this against opposite tree, and I'm leaning there all my strength, slowly getting it around. Just yarding on it with everything I have. And so you really stretch the moose skin. Whoops. Caribou hide, I imagine, you'd have holes all the way around, and you'd tie it off, and you'd ring it, and it wouldn't require as much, but you still have to do the same thing. You have to pull apart the rawhide structure and literally break the insides of it apart for it to be tanned. And this here is smoked. I smoked it same time as this one in the smokehouse, and so this one's gonna probably be worked on this spring, and probably in my garage, probably because it's not like a Mushkin to where you're dealing with a lot of water. Whereas I would use 10 gallons, 12 gallons of water on a Mushkin, soaking it, bringing it in and out of that. That's a lot of water. This probably wouldn't be very much, and hopefully I'll get some caribou brains from somebody. So please, because and my goal too is probably I'm gonna take a hide to camp. Our late parents, now my brother Gilbert has a camp between Galena and Ruby. I am going to traditionally ferment, brain, tan a Mushkin. Honor thing. That's how I feel about it. I really can't say enough how much I appreciate and love all the old grandmas who did so much for us. So I am going to do a traditional, I'm going to get it ready right, not in a jar. I'm going to use raw hide to ferment it, to try to replicate what our ancestors, the grandmothers of our ancestors did for us, and just for my own make me feel better about myself, I guess. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, Shelby says thank you for answering the question, and says he's watching from Fairbanks, Alaska. And we also have a masicho for doing this. Thanks so much for all of the knowledge you're sharing. A lot of appreciation for you sharing your knowledge here tonight.
Okay, I'll punt again a little bit because you know, when I was ringing it, and when I was ringing it, I did leave out, darn it. I have a special pole right here. And this is on that pole too, and it's tied up. And this part here, it's shaped the way it is. I hooked the holes on the edge of the Mushkin and part of it, and I pull on the rest of the Mushkin too with it. Part of the stretching process. And I didn't do that when I first did the Mushkin, but I found out, I heard somebody did it, and so I'm just trying to use as much information I can. So I did that after I wrote my first piece on how I first did the Mushkin. So it's still evolving into more. I'm finding out that each suggestion makes it easier, or makes more sense. Why they're doing it. Everything that I've learned so far has a specific purpose. The end result is you want a soft, stretchy Mushkin, no hard spots, right thickness, right color, right smell, just like our grandmas did. Yeah.
Sometimes we have a peg like with the long pole,
Yeah.
about this big, and it's wide in the middle and narrow at the ends, and we put it through them holes
Anna.
to rinse it. Oh, we the peg, we put it through the holes that you have around,
Yeah.
and when we use that to rinse, so the mousse can.
Yeah.
It using big poles sometimes is too big for us, so
Yeah,
we
I
started
would
out
say-
with little pegs.
I would say here, this setting, this studio setting, you can't really get up and, I have all the stuff here. I have my poles here, my tubs here. And this thing here, while it's soaking in the tub, I have this in the tub also. This one. Let's say this was wet and it was in the tub, and I'm doing this too. I'm working it.
That's what it's for.
I'm stretching it. I'm stretching it, working it. All the thing is to change the structure of leather to make it as soft as this. No noise. That's good.
In my area, we have that pole. We have it high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I did this one. One day my back was hurting,
Yeah.
and I wanted to sit down. So this one here, it's so I could sit down and
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
We have another thank you. Christina says Inabasi to Tom, Anna, and Elizabeth. And we have an idea from Rochelle in Beaver who wonders if, Tom, have you ever thought about doing a language project with this process?
You know what? I wish I wasn't so hearing impaired. I take this with me kind of wherever I go. And there's so much, you know, I'm not a fluent speaker. You know, Denakkanaaga. Let's play language and correct me if I sound wrong or something. Denakkanaaga. That's a general term for moose. Nichoni, bull moose. Kai cheja, kaiga, biggest bull moose. Tezoye, cow moose. Petechega, hulan, cow with calf. Techega, calf, first year with mother. Ke ekoni, dasla, yearling calf, no mother. And that's just a few of many terms for the different moose. That they're all Denakkanaaga, but there's a whole bunch for specific ones. And there's and I'll throw a curve at everybody. This is off subject. Everybody calls us Alaskan Native. Everybody calls us Athabaskan. Everybody calls me Koyukon. All of those are somebody else's words for us. I come from the Koyukuk River. The lower Koyukuk River in the native language is Okokano. The middle river is Kayochina. And so I'm part of that. All of us, the Athabascans, Koyukon, or whatever, in our language, I think we're Kliyaga Hutani, means we're people of the land. And so for me, you know, that Athabascan, that would be Kliyaga Hutani. That means that people of the land, that's our own word for ourselves. And then to be specific, Minto, you say Pintai Kotana, something like that. A lot now, because you're Inupiaq. Inupiaq actually means the people. What do I want to say? In each area, the Yupik, all the different places, it means the people. And Kliyaga means people of the land. So if, want to play language, that's a whole thing, different thing. And so Dena means man. So and my mother is from Kaiko. She's from Okokano part of the river. My dad is from the Koyachana part of the river. So I'm both part of those, so I can't be either one, so I can only be Kliyaga. And then Hogatsa no. That means Hogatsa River. That's where I'm from. And it's something that needs to be studied. because, we could be, we're finding out that we really aren't who we are told to be, because they tell us we're this, but that's somebody else speaking instead of us, yeah, there's all kinds of different, different words for moose, and so it could be a language thing, but probably not from me because I'm not a fluent speaker. I could research it and come up with the right names, but being a hearing impaired, I probably wouldn't say it right. Yeah, but there are fluent speakers out there, and there's actually language educators who would probably do a bang-up job on that. But I could probably research and come up with the words for whatever we want, because thanks to a Jesuit priest, Julius Jeddy and Eliza Jones, who's my cousin from Koyukuk, they come up with the Koyukon Athabascan Dictionary, and it's a wealth of knowledge. Brain tanning. How much time we have?
About 10 minutes left.
Huh?
About 10 minutes.
Okay, yeah, they're brain tanning Mushkin, every animal name in the book. It's all in here. It's a great source of information, because the water that we soak it in, well, the fermented brain has a name. The water that you soak it in has a name. The ringing in it has a name. It's all in there. So yes, a language project can be worked into tanning Mushkin.
From our area, we have a young boy. He's in Arizona, but he's more fluent in our language than I am. So I just know words. I couldn't put it into a sentence. And in our Athabascan, I don't know if Elizabeth, we're clans. I'm from the Caribou clan, Bitzik Dot Anna. And so, and we go on the mother's side. Do you have clans too, Elizabeth?
I'm Caribou clan and also the Swan from the, around Kotzview and all the way Kobuk area. That's where I'm originated from, really. That's where my ancestors came from. Okay. I learned all that, thank God, before my sister Bertha died. She's the one that done the research on that. Yeah.
The clans, so once the sad aspect from my point of that is my mother, my grandma Agnes, my mom's mom, passed away when my mother was 2.5 or 3 years old. So she didn't know what clan she was from. Yeah. And then so we tried to go to, she only had one sister, and so that would have been the same clan, but then all that family passed away. Yeah. So there was nobody to ask, so I don't know which clan I am. I just know it's probably Caribou or Bear, coming from where my parents come from. And so that's, this great sadness loss when it's matrial, it's from the mother's side, and my mom becoming an orphan at a young age, we lost that connection. Yeah.
Well, We have another comment from Christina. She said that a few of us tried to organize an intertribal Northern Dene hide tanning camp a couple summers ago. And I think they're feeling inspired because she says we might have to revisit that plan. An intertribal hide tanning camp where we work on language and hide tanning.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's having become intrigued and wanting to do this. It's my hope that somehow it's revived amongst Native people. To have camps, to have gatherings specifically. If there's a group, we could tan a Mushkin fairly quick. And if there was some prep work like the fleshing and the dehairing of it, and just have a raw hide, as a group, we could thin it in one day. It would be just a matter of, and we could do traditional brain tanning. Maybe I could start it and have it ready for that time. It would probably be an outdoor setting of some kind of tent, open air kind of thing, so fermented smell would be tolerable, but for everybody probably. You could probably do a Mushkin in a few days, because one guy resting, somebody else is doing the task, and I'm sure someone else will be inspired by experiencing that. And for me, it's like language and songs and anything in trapping, the woodwork of snowshoes, sled building, all that stuff. It's important for me, the way I see it, and it's worthwhile. It's who we are. It's just not practice. It's hidden away, but I would venture to say that it's right under the surface to somebody to grasp onto it and do it. Because I for one, everyone says, oh, it's hard work. They don't know it's hard work if they don't do it, but it's a work that you'll enjoy. It gives you alone time, thinking time, gives you remembrance time. You think of your past grandmas. You think of, I could say Grandma Bessie, Grandma Big Sophie, Mary Vent, Annie Vent, Laura Mark, Catherine Atla, all those women. When I'm doing this, the memory of them doing it, scraping it, come to me, and those are good stuff. It's healthy stuff to experience. Anything else?
There was a lady from Minto, Annie Titus.
Yeah.
Her mother, originally from Tanana. They said she tanned 5 of them one time.
I believe it.
Yeah, 5. And she didn't cry over it either, like us young girls today.
Yeah.
Everything we touch and it don't turn out, we cry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. The lifestyle of their past. Nowadays, everybody say it's hard. It's hard work. It's hard work. It's hard work. But when you just had to do it, it's not hard work. It's just something that you had to do. Mm-hmm. And so, when I first started talking to different people, every one of them said, "Oh, that's hard work. Oh, that must be hard work." But like I said, for me, it's healthy. Not only remembering it's activity that's you get physical exercise. Most of the time you're outside. It's just healthy. And my soon-to-be 15-year-old boys, he has classmates. Just weekend spin-a-nighters. I have them, I'm showing them stuff, you know, and they enjoy it. They don't have to be stuck on those games. I mean, it's healthy. So,
You know, Rhea Williams, you said, oh, you know her children. The one you stay up with in Denakkanaaga.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She married Joe Williams Jr., and his mother was Kathleen Linus. Can she tan? She was just a little woman, too. Boy, every summer, how many moose can she tan? That's out staying in a fish camp, fishing part-time, and still have time to tan all those mookins. And then Rhea, she had that TB when the TB area was in the hospital for a long time. She wasn't really that strong, but she learned that method. It looked so easy for her. There was a certain way they done it. Yeah.
okay, I'll say I wouldn't mind physically. I mean, not in a studio setup. Once COVID is over and visiting is back to normal again, we could have closer interaction and stuff like that. I would gladly talk or show or even invite visitors with more native food again. Hopefully some of you will come to physically hands-on do it, whether it be a workshop, whether it be cultural camps, whether it be different villages. But I wouldn't mind if I was to do that to team up with somebody with some an educator experience or perspective to make sure that it's presented to a in the right way for learning. I'm learning how to do it. I physically do it. That doesn't make me the best teacher. So I wouldn't mind doing that in collaboration with an educator.
Well, let's put our heads together
Yes.
and make a date.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sounds wonderful, and a lot of people would love to take you up on that offer. And we've come to the end of our time. It's 8 o'clock. So I just want to thank all of you so much for all of the knowledge and stories that you've shared. Our audience, thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and for those of you who contributed questions and ideas. To our sponsors, again, Design Alaska and Gem Company generously supported tonight's live stream, so thank you very much to our sponsors, Design Alaska and Gem Company. Our co-organizers, this is a joint effort of Denakkanaaga, Tanana Chiefs Conference, and the Morris Thompson Center. And if you love this program and would like to see more like this, please do feel free to go to our landing page, morristhompsoncenter.org/live. You can sign up for updates about future programs, and if you want to show your support, you can do that there too. So thank you, everybody. It's been really wonderful tonight. Tom, I think everybody learned so much. Your stories lent so much richness to it. It's been really great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
We had fun.
It was fun.